Okay, today I'm gonna talk about use effect. So again, I'm gonna use this empty project as a beginning. So first, what is use effect? Use effect is an alternative of life cycle functions in class component. Use effect could replace component. There are several APIs in lifecycle functions in class, right? So including componentDidMount, componentDidUpdate, and componentWillUnmount. Right? So again, I'm gonna back to this root component, and I'm gonna use a count component to show you as an example again. So function count component. Okay, now I just mount this count component on the root component. So whatever function component or class component, the lifecycle functions only do several things, right? Including subscribe something, unsubscribe something, and HTTP request, right? Stuff like that. So now I just put a use effect in the function component. So this one is subscribe something. So I just use a console log to represent a subscribe action, right? To simulate. So suppose this is action to subscribe something, right? Subscribe store object, subscribe pops up subscribe other components, right? So okay, I have use effect, and this one I do unsubscribe. And this one I do HTTP request. These are all commonly used. These are the common actions what we do in the lifecycle functions, right? So now I come to this and I open this console window and I refresh the page. As you can see, it says subscribe something, unsubscribe something, HTTP request. So back to this. So how do we use effect, this hook, this React hook? So first we use effect without second parameter. So as you can see here, so this function use effect accept two parameters. The first one is a callback function. You can declare yourself, and then the second parameter is right here. and you can define something else. So only difference here is the second parameter. Now I use it without second parameter. As you can see it here, subscribe something, unsubscribe something, HTTP request in the console, right? So now I'm gonna add it means that those functions has been called once the page loaded. Now I want to render re-render a component on this page. See what happened. Let's do state. So count 0, and I want to display it here. Count value count. I have a button called add 1. I just declare this button right here. So set count plus 1 add 1 1 2 3 4, and you can see it from console. So once I click this button, so there are three these three function has been called again and again. Subscribe something, unsubscribe something, and HTTP request. So it means that use effect without second parameter represent componentDidMount, and at the same time componentDidUpdate, right? Same thing. Yeah. Okay, so back to this. So I just comment this out for the moment. So comment this out. Okay, the first two functions should be called once the page loaded. And yeah, we don't need to send HTTP request again and again all the time. Once there's one component has rendered on the page, then we call these functions again. This seems not quite right? So we only need to send HTTP request once. We only need to subscribe something once after the page component has been mounted on the page. So how do we do this? We just put an empty array here, and we refresh the page. As you can see here, so subscribe something HTTP request, because this unsubscribe action has been commented out. So both these two functions has been called after the page loaded, right? So now I just click this button at 1. As you can see here, only one function has been use effect function has been called, which is subscribe something. Click the button again, right? So you put an empty array here. It means that this function will be called only when page initially loaded, right? So when there's some other component on the page rendered, this function won't be called. So it means that use effect with an empty array as second parameter is equal to componentDidMount, right? So what does this empty array mean? So you can pass as much as variable in your component right here. If you didn't put anything, so it is empty array. So this array means dependency of this function. You didn't put any dependency in this array, means that this function won't be called anything changed, right? So it will only be called once the page loaded. And when this parameter is empty here, so it is empty here, it means that this whatever anything happened on this page, any action, any click, event, anything happened, any component re-rendered, or when the page initially loaded, this function will be called. So these are the difference between these two. And again, we have function use effect with an empty array. So there is another scenario, this one. So normally we need to do something like when this component has been unmounted, so we need to unsubscribe something. So how do we do that? We just put this in a return function here. Yeah, so we just return this thing. So these actions right here, unsubscribe something or clear a timer or anything other thing else, which you want to do before the component will be unmounted. So you can just put into a return function, which will be called before the component will unmount. So based on the same logic, I just need to execute this action once. So I just put an empty array here. Return function use effect with an empty array. So again, I refresh the page. As you can see here, so subscribe something, HTTP request, add one, subscribe something. Now I want to unmount this component, this count on component. What we can do, we can just come to this root component, right? So count on components right here. So I can do show. If show is true, I will display this count. If show is not true, right? Switch show. If the show is not true, this component will not be displayed. So now I have already set up the show as true, and I will give a function right here. So I'll click this dot. Let's call it toggle. Set state show this dot state dot show. Right, we just get a reverse value, right? So this dot state dot this dot state dot show, right? So let's try. Okay, switch show. I'm gonna put let's see mount and unmount count component. Right, let's do click. As you can see here, so unsubscribe something. let's do mount, right? Subscribe something, HTTP request, unmount, subscribe unsubscribe something, right? So this is the way we use it as we use effect to simulate component date mount and component will unmount. Yeah, this is how we use it. And the last thing is we count back to this count component. So right here I have another value. It's called state. It's called is login, and I set it as true. I have a button. It's so set is login is login. So and right here I want to display something like is fickle is, and so if is login true, login, or not login. Okay, back to this. I click this, is login, not is not login, is login, is not login. You can see it here from console. So subscribe something has been called again. Let's use HTTP request as the example. So HTTP request has been called, but is fickle login or not login? It doesn't really matter with the HTTP request, right? So it means that when we set up is login or log out, we don't want to do anything associated with other values, right? So it means right here so we is fickle login or not, it doesn't really matter with HTTP requests. So you can just set up you can put is login instead of this effect. So what does this mean? Only this is login changed, this function will be called, this action will be triggered, this event will be triggered. If you set count value here, so only the count value has to be changed, that this action will be triggered. So this, we put so it means that this function will monitor the variable, the specific variable in this component. If there's any other variable has changed, doesn't really matter with this function. So this action, this event, so it would just improve the performance of this, right? Because even though there are something, let's call it componentDidUpdate, only is login value data update. Right? Let's do is login, is not login. As you can see it from console. So only login is login value did update. So if I click count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this function, this only is login value did update won't be triggered. So suppose I put count here, right? Is login, right? So there are some actions need to be triggered when some value or some variable in this component changed, but this function is supposed to be only triggered by some specific variable, not every all variables in this component. So you just put a specific variable here so that it will only be triggered by specific variable change, right? So with field array is component did update specific component did update, which is monitored by this use effect, right? So actually these are the three ways we use a use effect with without second parameter, with second parameter as an empty array, with second parameter as a field array, and also when this is an empty array, there are also two ways that we can do componentDidMount and componentWillUnmount, right? So it is pretty straightforward. So this is how we use use effect to simulate life cycle functions in class component. Okay, so this is pretty much about use effect today.